Guy has been, as they always say, shot through the grease, came out the other side. He's an attorney. Doc Miller's with us, and we're talking about his book about the Ramseys that had to actually be published in Japan. And we're kind of going over all of it, sort of inside baseball. And just to begin, as the man said at the beginning, John Ramsey's big statement, it's just more drama. Both of us agree John Ramsey is sweating bullets right now. He can't go around on the Christian networks anymore. What was his last book? Something to Grace. What was the name of that book?
I don't recall.
And,
I really don't recall. I read their first book.
Yeah, I did too.
Yeah, and it was nice of them to give me a little shot across my bow.
Yeah.
and talk about how despicable I was.
Oh yeah.
They found my wife despicable because.
But she knew them, did she not? I mean,
she knew them well.
Yeah, Judith Phillips knew them in Atlanta, right?
Oh yeah, they were. They both worked. Patsy Ramsey and Judith's husband at the time worked for the same company, a computer company, and they used to socialize together. They went out to dinner together. They went on a trip to the wine country together. Judith and her husband moved here to Boulder about a year before the Ramseys did. Judith helped them find their house on 15th Street. Judith photographed the family. Judith's a fabulous photographer, as you know.
Oh, is it indeed?
And, many of the photographs that they run on national TV are the photographs that Judith did. So she photographed the family. She photographed the children. She never photographed John, though. John never wanted to be in the photographs.
John's
but she knew him. She knew him, and she knew their friends. One of their friends lived right across the street from Judith and me when I lived in Boulder with her. And their family, their children, we had some puppies, and the children would love to come and see the puppies, but never a word between the adults there and Judith and myself. They would not speak to us. That city was driven right in half by the Ramsey case.
Yeah, I think Schiller's book, Perfect Murder, Perfect Town. I'm not crazy about the book.
Right.
But I got to tell you something. The title is right on the money.
It sure is.
They really thought they were perfect, and this couldn't have happened.
Well, and one of the things that Boulder excels in is looking down their nose.
Oh, absolutely.
Rich town.
Oh.
So the tabloids were the bad guys. And it didn't take Pat Corton long to figure out that he could blame the tabloids and take the blame off the Ramseys.
Oh, sure.
Exactly what he tried to do.
Yeah.
And to some extent, it worked in Boulder.
Well, it totally worked in Boulder. Even the Denver Post, remember they went and showed pictures, but they published the front page, I think, of the Inquirer that showed her little hand with the ligature.
Oh,
I remember what
Globe.
Hypocrisy. That was the Globe. So much hypocrisy.
Well, of course, that was Craig Lewis at work. He's the one who got those autopsy photographs.
Yep. And so, tell the folks, because the Denver Post tried to take them this high ground on the murder. So it was the Globe that on the front page shows the little girl's arm, a color photo. What does the Post do? They print the front page of the Globe.
Right, as if they didn't see it. As if, it's not us.
Yes, it's not.
This picture.
But there we are, right?
Try and move one step away from it, and there you have no responsibility, no guilt whatsoever of being involved in this tabloid journalism.
All right, when you got sued over this, and
I didn't get sued, my friend.
Well, I'm sorry, sued when you were prosecuted, and
yes.
I didn't mean to say sued.
No, that's all right. That's all right.
And I ended up we had to testify for you. I remember that so well. And I had to go to Jeffco so many times. What was the woman judge? There was a woman judge. I forget her name.
Tidball.
Yeah.
Right.
And it was like, I said, hi, Your Honor. She said hi. I was there so many times, she always said hi to me.
Yeah.
That was a story.
After that trial, after it was all over, I was representing a client in Jefferson County, and she was good enough to recuse herself from that case, and we moved it to a different courtroom. I have no respect for the way Tidball handled that trial. At one point, during cross-examination, Tidball said that the question, there was no objection raised, but she, God, how does the word escape me right now? Sustained. She said, objection sustained. Gary Lozo.
Yeah, Gary. I actually got a call from him the other day.
Oh, he's a great guy.
He's a great guy.
He looked at the jury, he looked at me, and he said, I didn't hear an objection.
Yeah.
And then now Judge Dennis Hall, who was the prosecutor at the time, says, "Well, there certainly is one."
Yes.
I mean, that goes to show you the level of prejudice that the district court judge had in this case. I was a lawyer.
Yeah.
I was a non-practicing lawyer because I was under felony indictment, but I still had that ticket, and because of that, the prosecution was severe.
I remember that. I remember that I was taken to a private get together and shown the ransom note. And Lewis knew about it. So Lewis and I'd said it on the air. I said, "I've seen the ransom note."
Oh, I remember.
And so I had to take the stand, and the prosecutor said, Mr. Boyles, did you see the ransom note? And I said, "I have." "Who showed it to you?" And I said, "I invoked the press shield."
Yeah.
Remember that?
Yeah, and I remember everybody's head swimming in the court because they knew, that's going to stop the trial right there.
Right there. Right there. And I said,
all kinds of steps.
I invoked the press shield. And I had been through that before when they went, "Who's your source?" "Screw you." And right now Fox News is going to go through it because that woman reporter saw James Holmes' the Shrink's notebook.
Right.
And I said, "I invoked the shield." And they looked at me, and I'd learned all this stuff from some really great guys. And they looked at me, and then they said, "No, this is going to stop the trial." So they kicked it, and they just went past me, and I was dismissed. But I had to take my son out there. I remember I'd take Morgan out there because he answered the door for the subpoena. It was crazy stuff.
Of these investigators to go after your children.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, I kind of understood how they were sort of hooked up together and didn't know quite what to do.
One thing I remembered you saying at the trial is you were asked a question about the note, and as I remember, you said that was the pole star of the Ramsey.
Yeah, it is a pole star. That's right. It's the North Star.
North Star.
Yeah.
And I remember doing the examination of the note for the Globe, and it doesn't take long to determine that Patsy wrote that note.
Sure, Patsy wrote the note. Yeah. It's 11 after the hour. With us is as Doc Miller, an attorney. When you wrote your book, and I'm going to jump back and forth here.
Sure.
Was it published in Japan? Do I remember that right?
2007.
Yeah.
But there's not a publisher in the United States that will take it. And believe me, my agent has tried.
Yeah.
But everybody's afraid. Well, they have been afraid. Now, this new information may change things, and maybe someday. But the first chapter of my book is on my website if somebody wants to find out the evidence that I think points to Patsy Ramsey.
What do you think happened? Let's begin, as they say at the beginning. Let's take you back in time. Patsy Ramsey at 5:52 a.m., December the 26th, calls 911, even though the note says, if we so much as see a cop, she's beheaded.
Right.
Take it from there.
Well, Patsy and John are exhausted. They've been up all night. There were only three. There were four people in that house. One of them wound up dead. So there's three people. One of the things that we know is that Burke was awake at the time of that phone call. He's heard in the background of the tape.
Of course.
But they say at first, no, Burke was asleep. And interesting, Burke is the only one who's called into the grand jury. Patsy and John aren't. And we learn through the grand jury testimony, Burke is honest enough to say he was awake. Well, I believe what happened is there was tremendous jealousy in the house from Burke towards John Bonet. John Bonet was this perfect next Miss America. John Ramsey's sailboat was called the Miss America.
Oh, remember what it was Crazy Aunt Pam and Mom said, and they all said, what's the greatest thing that a woman can adhere to? And they said, be Miss America.
That's right. That was Nedra.
Nedra Pa.
Right. Well, I believe something happened between Burke and John Bonet, but don't know what. I wasn't there, but I do know that there were certain signs that John Bonet was being abused in that house. And then, for whatever reason, I believe that a crime was completed and covered up by John and Patsy. And I believe that firmly because there's no doubt in my mind that Patsy wrote that note.
Oh yeah, of course.
And you don't write the War and Peace of notes like that.
That's what I said. It was the War and Peace and ransom note.
That's right. Well, I quote you.
Yeah. Thank you. But that's what I said. Yeah.
Yeah. Unless you're involved, and she was involved. And of course, soon after that, we know that she's on tremendous sedatives. She's drugged out. She's kept away from the telephone. Occasionally she has these outbursts of making phone calls to talk shows and et cetera. So that I'm sure that they had a heck of a time trying to keep her under control because she really wanted to tell everybody how innocent she was. But part of that was her need to confess.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I've always thought, someone once asked me, what is it about that case you'd like to know? And like you and like Carol McKinley and like so many other people, Charlie Brennan's the best example of everyone. Having lived the story and been emotionally involved in it and been in courtrooms over it, I wanted to know what Patsy Ramsey dreamt at night.
Oh, my God.
I mean, I thought that, as they said, every night the devil came and danced in Patsy's dreams. Had to be.
Oh,
and I think,
and she must. No wonder she had to have sedatives.
And I think now the devil's dancing in John's dreams.
Well, I don't know. You sure John isn't the devil?
Remember that? But I wanted to know what Patsy dreamed.
It's interesting. During the course of writing that book, I was having nightmares of such a severe nature. My father and I were in Cody, Wyoming, taking a few days off, father, son.
Sure.
And he's a physician. And I was waking up at night, one night, just kicking and screaming in the bed I had across from him. And we had a long talk the next morning as to whether I needed sedatives or if I needed to talk to somebody about what I was going through with this book. I think talking to my father was good enough, but
it was a crazy time.
Oh, it's nightmarish when you think of what was done to that child, and then you look at the system that's here to protect us. I defended a poor black woman in child abuse resulting in death, and I can tell you the system works much differently.
Ask Aaron Thompson.
Oh yeah. Well, the kind of money that the Ramseys had for this defense bought the system.
Well, they had. How? I'm going to ask a question, and then we'll break. How much of an inside track do you think Channel 9 and Paula Woodward had in this whole case? Just hold it there. He is one of my true favorites. Doc's with us, Doc Miller, attorney who wrote a book about John and Patsy and about the case itself and everything that he went through. Kate is show with us this morning, again, looking for people who fought through the Ramseys. This man did. Doc Miller, he's an attorney and ended up in a courtroom over this and people threatening everybody. And so I bring you to this, and I am thoroughly convinced. Paula Woodward is either writing a book, has written a book, and she approached Carol McKinley, and she also approached Julie Hayden from Fox, and Bill Owens called me about a year ago about the book, and I am convinced that she had the inside track. We always called her Paula the Brown-Nosed Reporter, but I think through Hal Haddon, being that he defended her ex-husband because her suck-up with the Ramseys and Mary Lacey, that she was able to first break the story that they had arrested John Mark Carr, for the real murderer, the lady man. How much do you think Nine and Paula Woodward were directly pipelined into this?
Well, you point out the evidence that she was the first one to break the story, but the other side of that, what truly points to her inside connection, is that she's going to get a book published.
You think is that going to happen?
Well, if it's favorable to the Ramseys, it can be published. If it's not favorable to the Ramseys, it can't be published.
Why is that?
It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
Now, publishers don't publish books to make political statements or to draw lawsuits. They do it for money, and that's a good rational basis. But if they're afraid of a lawsuit, such as Steve Thomas suffered, they're not going to publish.
Yeah, but now with the drop on the grand jury, I wonder.
Does that stop a lawsuit?
Well, does it? I mean, does it become laughable when they start to defend the innocence of the Ramseys, knowing that the grand jury wanted to pop them?
Well, one of the difficulties that I had was that Mary Lacey, you remember, cleared the Ramseys.
Yeah, but I think Garnett goes the other way on him. He said it's an active case, didn't he?
That's right. And I think that, and of course now with this new evidence that there was a vote to indict, that changes things.
I wonder. I wonder what they'll do.
Contacting my agent, see what we can do. Okay. Someday maybe I'll self-publish this thing. Like I said, I think I said earlier that the first chapter of it is on my website. I want the facts out there.
Well, we'll do this. In the next break, we'll put a link up from us to you to from K-How to you, and people can read it. So pick it up. The Ramseys host. Pardon me. The Ramseys go over to Fleet and Priscilla's house the night of the 25th because the next day they're leaving.
Right.
They're going to their vacation home in Michigan.
And what movie do they watch over there that night? Ransom.
Yeah, Mel Gibson.
Yeah.
So, and Patsy, there's some pictures that are taken by Fleet and Priscilla, and they show how Patsy is dressed. When she opens the door for the Boulder PD that morning, how is she dressed?
She was dressed in the same red sweater.
That's exactly right. And some fibers from that were found on the duct tape on the little girl's mouth.
Right. And also, I believe some of those fibers were found in the garrote.
Yep. No, I agree.
And of course, the garrote is obviously the Boy Scout knots that were used. I mean, all of this just points to John and Patsy. There's just they would have. I don't think the Boulder the Boulder District Attorney's Office could have won the murder trial.
Yeah.
Because of the skill of the Haddon firm. And Alex knew that.
Yeah.
I mean, they hadn't tried a murder case in, a decade?
Yeah, they hadn't done it, right?
So they didn't have the skills to go to trial. And I think that's one of the reasons that, that's one of the many reasons that Alex Hunter was so unwilling to prosecute and so willing to work to try and develop his reputation with the press. Craig Lewis was walking next to Alex Hunter as he was walking out to the news conference to announce how proud he was of the American justice system, that there wasn't going to be an indictment. Lewis stopped just before exiting the building. And Craig Lewis was Alex Hunter's confidant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Remember that Jeff Shapiro character? He was the other confidant, right?
You know what his nickname was? Craig Lewis used to call him?
What?
Idiot Boy.
Oh, Idiot Boy. Yeah, that's right. He'd tell me that. We'd be up in the parking lots, and he'd say, "Here comes Idiot Boy."
And he used to come over to when Judith and I met. It was magic. We fell in love at first sight, and we've been together ever since. But Idiot Boy used to come over to Judith's house unannounced whenever he felt like it. When he felt like he needed a piece of information, I finally had to physically get in his face and said, "You're not going to do this anymore.
Beat it."
Yeah,
remember. Although he was a Jewish kid, he went to Roll Hoverstock, the minister at the Episcopal Church.
Right.
And he told me he didn't want to be a Jew anymore. He wanted to be Episcopalian.
Well, and then of course, in order to further his career, he realized. I think he realized. I don't know. I can't say what was in his mind.
Yeah, right.
But then he sucked up to the Ramseys and became their defender.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And remember how the Ramseys staged that picture and Hoverstock put the mitre hat on, looked like the Pope.
Oh yeah, and of course, the people who were attending that church had no idea that they were being used as camera fodder.
No, they precisely were.
Directed and produced by Pat Corton,
the guy that we just talked about. It was so orchestrated.
Well, the entire investigation. I'm sure what was driving Hal Haddon crazy is that in this three-ring circus, Hal Haddon wanted to be the ringmaster, and it was Craig Lewis. I mean, Craig Lewis was ahead of the other tabs on this. He was living here in Boulder. He had fistfuls of cash. He had private investigators in Denver and Boulder.
Yeah. Oh, he did.
I had given him access. I was no longer working as a private investigator, but I had identified for him several information brokers. He could get a credit card record, a telephone record, a private telephone. He could get anything he wanted.
Oh yeah, he was great. He was great. I mean, I used to sit and there'd be 3 or 4 of those guys. Like I said, they were one-upping one another one time, and he said, and the one guy had taken pictures of Lady Di, or Princess Diana, on Dodi Fayed's, and he said, when she did that whole routine about how the press was hounding her, so I think we're in Zadie's, and he said, I watched her change bikinis and bathing suits 7 times in one day and keep coming out on the bow of the boat. Told me the story. We're sitting there talking. He said she'd go in and put on a new bikini or new bathing suit and then strut back out for us to take her picture. He said, and in her death, they all say, oh, the damn, photographers and paparazzi, or, He said, hell, we watched her in Monaco. I mean, it was those British guys. They were classics.
What must have driven Patsy nuts is that she couldn't do that.
Oh, she wanted to.
Oh, she did.
Yeah.
She loved as she said once, good press, bad press, any press.
What's the difference? That's right.
That's right.
Yeah. I just think it's just, I mean, it's just such a story that, Schiller's book, but it's never been told the real, what it was like and who these people really were and who the players were and how people danced away from the fire when it was over. And
Schiller gave legs to the intruder theory.
Oh, absolutely.
And that was despicable.
And, and he aced Charlie Brennan out of all of it. And, it was just a crazy minute in time. And for some reason, it's almost like these interesting moments when everybody shows up at once. But they did.
Well, when there's that much money, it's like a magnet.
Yeah.
You begin, it just draws, it draws attention, it draws interest. And of course, the sex and violence and gore and the kiddie porn aspect, the entire world. Well, look, my book was published in Japan, of all places. Yeah. They were fascinated by the murder, half the world away.
Sure. Oh, people are everywhere. I mean, you couldn't go anywhere without somebody saying, well, what about that? Here's the truth. This is a true story, and then we'll break and come back. Barry Fay takes me to the Ozfest. This is like one of the true life stories. He says, you want to meet Ozzy? I said, I'd love to meet Ozzy. I got my daughter with me. We'd been through this whole other thing that ends up in Fay's book. We go in, and Ozzy's on a Stairmaster. It's on my mom. Ozzy's on a Stairmaster watching National Geographic TV, getting ready to go out and be Ozzy. And, he's about nothing. He's about, 100 pounds and about, about 5'7". And he goes, oh, I know you. He said, and he goes in this whole thing. He said, about the effing killing that little effing girl. And he goes, and the whole thing about, he said, and the mother and the father. And he goes in this whole rap. And I'm looking at him. I said, Ozzy's following the Ramsey story. It was Ozzy Osbourne, I'm going. And also the same day when we were back, I met Marilyn Manson. Marilyn Manson was a total geek about it. Now, he said, now who came in and who did this? And I had like an hour talk with Marilyn. And then he goes and becomes Marilyn Manson. I mean, that's how many people were into that. Hang on, sir. Let me come back and have you online with us. Some guys ran and hid, and some guys stood and fought, and he stood and fought. Ladies and gentlemen, Doc Miller, and we're talking about the Ramseys now that the announcement comes. The grand jury wanted to drop the piano on John and Patsy. So what happens that night? And what you believe happens on the 26th, actually the night of the 25th, and they go to Fleet White's about 5 o'clock. On the drive home from the party, according to the Ramseys, John Bonet's falling asleep, and they just carry her into the house, and then they never see her again. What do you think happened?
Well, they fed her some pineapple after they got home.
No question. That was in her stomach.
That was found in her stomach. So evidently she wasn't completely asleep.
And they found pineapple in the refrigerator.
Right. And in her stomach, in the autopsy. That autopsy is gruesome to read. It appears to me, now John says that he and Burke were putting together one of his toys after they got home. I don't know. That's a boy whose his birthday, interestingly enough, is January 27. Burke's is. This is the evening of the 25th. He was 1 month shy of being 10 years old, and a child under the age of 10 can't be charged with a crime in Colorado. So I don't think they were putting toys together at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock at night. I don't think that's what was happening. John Bonet, we know, was wetting the bed and leaving feces in her bed, indications of sexual abuse. And we know that there was tremendous jealousy between Burke and John Bonet. We know that he had struck John Bonet once before, I believe with a golf club. So I believe something went wrong between Burke and John Bonet. I don't know what. I can't imagine what was going on. But then after that, Patsy and John make a determination that something's wrong and something has to be covered up. After all, someone hit John Bonet so hard in the head that, as they say, it would have felled a 300-pound man. Now, I don't know that Burke could have done that. But we do know that a garrote was put around John Bonet's neck. She was then either realistically or simulated sexually tortured. And a ransom note was produced. A tremendous ransom note was produced in Patsy Ramsey's handwriting. So, and I think, didn't the grand jury say that they failed to protect her?
I thought it was resulting in. I thought was the charge that I've read. I haven't seen, any principal documents. I've just read what others have said, but it was in child abuse that led to or directly led to death. And let me check my notes, but go ahead.
Well, so what we have here.
Here it is. Child abuse resulting in death. That was that was the charge.
Well, and it appears as though Patsy wrote the note. She had something to do with it. John completely backs her up and is willing to sue the world to keep everybody silent. So he's complicit in it. Then, of course, as to that night, what happened? Well, by 5:52 in the morning, they make the phone call to the police. But I think by 6 o'clock in the morning, the friends start arriving for the...
Oh, they had a phone tree. I always made that comment that they had... What's interesting to me is the note is, and I've read the note probably too many times and actually saw the note, but they're explicit. If we so much, and I'm paraphrasing, see a cop, we're going to behead her.
Right.
What does the first thing Patsy do? Now, later Patsy claimed that she didn't read the entire note, which is a total lie. I mean, why would you not read the entire note?
Well, especially with your daughter missing.
Absolutely. But she calls 911, and then, as you point out, and this was never, well, brought out in some places, they think they've hung up the phone, and they haven't. And so the tape continues to run at Boulder, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And you think that they heard Burke's voice on that tape?
I don't think. They did hear Burke's voice. Burke says something to the effect, what should I do?
Yeah, what's going on?
What's going on?
Yeah.
What should I do?
Yeah, right.
And you hear John's voice in the background says, we're not talking to you right now.
Yeah, go back to bed.
Right. So, and that...
Well, I've also, when you read what Fleet and Priscilla said, even though whatever they are, that allegedly there's this point where they say, go wake Burke up. And they go upstairs to wake Burke Ramsey up. However, he's already been awake.
Mm-hmm.
And according to what I've been led to believe, I don't know this, that he comes downstairs, there's cops, mom's crying, all the Fernies are there, the Whites are there, everybody's there, and the cops are there, mom's crying, he doesn't say anything. He doesn't ask, why is mom crying, where's my sister? And again, I'm led to believe all of this from witnesses. And they simply put him in a car and take him over to White's. And as I believe, he had gotten like a Game Boy for his Christmas, and he just sat in the car and played the Game Boy. Never asked. Do you understand it that way as well, Doc?
That's how I understand it.
Yeah.
There's something else that's interesting that morning. When I believe it's John Fernie arrives at the house, he's the first one
right
to come to the murder party. And he comes to the back door where he usually comes, and he sees the ransom note laid out on the floor by the back door. I mean, it's so unearthly. It's such a caricature of what should be going on at that time. But it has to be staged. You know
sure.
that and of course you have Patsy, who in her Miss West Virginia Miss America pageant did a dramatic reading.
She spays her fingers and looks through her hands, according to, I think it was either Linda Arndt or Fred Patterson.
Linda Arndt.
Linda Arndt said that she had her fingers spayed, fading, crying, looking to see if people were watching her.
Right.
Yeah.
And then, of course, Linda Arndt. Unbelievable. Linda Arndt.
Do you feel sorry for her?
Oh, yes, I do.
Yeah, I do too.
I feel very sorry for her. She, her career was destroyed.
Absolutely.
And certainly, a cop comes, who's there to serve the people, who comes to that house, given this enormous responsibility on a day when there aren't any other cops around her, it wouldn't have been her.
It's the day after Christmas. Only the rookies are working, right?
Right. She's there. She's a victim's advocate.
Yeah.
She tells John, well, go search the house.
But
and tells him, if you find anything, don't move the body.
Right. But
what does he do?
but what did one of the guys say? And we got to break here. That John Ramsey could see in the dark. He knew. He yells before he screams allegedly before the door opens. And one of the officers, I believe which one it was, might have been Patterson, but somebody opens the door and they don't see that body.
No, it's Fleet White.
Oh, it's Fleet that. That's right. It's Fleet that didn't
Fleet
see the
White's
body.
there
Okay.
with him.
Right.
And before there's no light, and Johns goes, "Oh my God!"
Yeah, right.
Rushes into the room and disturbs the crime scene.
Yeah, right.
Picks her up,
Right.
carries her upstairs.
And that's John Ramsey can see in the dark.
Well, so can the devil.
Hang on, we're coming you back. A couple of minutes to go with just a remarkable guy. We're telling the story of the Ramseys. Doc Miller is with us. We now have a link up on our website, khow.com, over to the first chapter of Doc's book. Said and done with about 6 minutes left until we have to bust away. Do you think, you and I were talking, and we always talk privately. I said I've waited a long time for that story to come down on Sunday, Monday, that the grand jury actually voted to indict both of them. And I thought, given a long enough time, something was going to break in this case. What needs to happen next?
Well, Stan Garnett, who
he's a good man,
is as a criminal defense lawyer here in Colorado, I hear good things about him.
Yep.
He's a good man.
Yep.
And he said it's an active investigation.
Right.
We don't have the poisonous, vituperative office of Mary Lacey there. I think Stan Garnett's got something he can sink his teeth into. Certainly, I think that he's developing some trial lawyers up there. Mm-hmm. There's no statute of limitations on this. I once said that if I was district attorney, the first thing I would do would be to charge John and Patsy. Well, Patsy's gone.
Right.
But I think it would be... the title of my book is John Benet Ramsey, Prostitution of Justice. Mm-hmm. I would like to see that era of prostitution end. I would like to see justice for a 6-year-old child. That's what I want. That's why I wrote the book. Mm-hmm. That's what my wife cried about night after night after night. Mm-hmm. That's what needs to be done. This case has been solved.
Oh, yeah.
And even if John Ramsey is found not guilty due to the skill of his lawyers, mm-hmm. at least he could walk the line like I did.
That's right.
He can sit in the courtroom, look at the jury, and deal with the truth.
We were trying to think of the name of the lawyer. It was Mike Bynum.
Mike Bynum, right.
And Linda Arndt, Linda Arndt approaches John Ramsey, and at that point, John Ramsey, the lawyer, Mike Bynum, cuts off the conversation and tells Arndt that they've got lawyers now and that John Ramsey was no longer going to talk to the cops.
Right.
Well,
and of course, on the CNN interview, John Ramsey says, "Oh, the Boulder police are great. They're fine."
Nah.
Patsy says they're wonderful.
Yeah.
And then they start spewing venom.
I remember that New Year's Eve thing on CNN, Hold Your Babies Close. There's a killer out there. And that, what was her name? The great Leslie, that Boulder buffoon. And they couldn't even stand up to these people and say, you know what, they're liars. There's no killer loose out here.
Well, this was a Plum interview. Was it Brian?
That's right. It was on
Brian
CNN.
Cable or Brian?
That's right.
Something like that.
That's right.
This was a plum for him.
Yeah.
But it was a plum to get that interview. But it was also a plum for the investigation.
Oh, yeah.
I'll tell you who was really ticked about that. That was the mayor of Boulder.
Yeah.
She was really angry that she made that statement. She came out and said, you don't have to worry. There's no serial killer running around Boulder trying to kill your children.
But she never called them liars.
No.
Which is what she should have done.
When you do, you get sued.
Yeah.
When you do, you have Pat Corton organizing a public relations campaign against you.
God knows they tried.
Now, when you find the ransom note, you spend about $250,000 defending yourself against being thrown in prison.
Yeah, no.
And when I came out of that trial, I had nothing left. Zero, zip, nada. My wife, Judith, we'd spent our retirement. We'd spent everything. I mean,
what do you think? What do you think they paid Hal Haddon? What do you think they paid all the lawyers they had? What do you think they continue to pay?
Oh, it had to cost millions and millions. They had Patrick Burke.
Right.
Patrick Burke is a crackerjack lawyer. He's the one who got a copy of the ransom note.
Right.
They had the professor of law at the University of Colorado.
That's right. Yeah.
I can't remember his name. Mueller, isn't it?
Yeah.
Norm Mueller. And of course, they had the power of Haddon Morgan and Foreman.
Let me do this. You and I will do this again in about 10 days with a group of people. And you made the morning work, man. Thanks, Doc. Say hi to Judith, and I love you, man.
Well,
thanks,
thank
brother.
You. It was an honor to work with you.
You the man.